One.
Okay, welcome everybody to Staff Recruitment. This is your final episode or final webinar for Staff Recruitment and Induction. In this webinar, we'll actually be taking through all of the assessment tasks. If you scroll down the bottom of your screen, you can see that we have 5 assessment tasks in this particular subject, in this particular unit of competence, which actually relates to manage recruitment, selection and induction, the official unit of competency there. So we'll be taking through each of those 5 tasks. By the end of the session, you'll have all of the information that you need to be able to go off and successfully complete those assessment tasks for this particular unit. And so yeah, this is the last one for business students for this particular subject. Alyssa, would you like to add anything more to this before we continue?
No, I mean, just make sure, obviously, guys, as you'll, make sure you've gone through your learning activities prior and you've got them completed, because they'll give you a lot of backup information that will help assist you with the assessment process. And there are 5 assessments that are on offer for this unit, but it is really important that you've obviously gone through your learning activities, and they will definitely help you and assist you through this process. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do have 5 to get through, so just don't be overwhelmed by those 5.
So now look, we're all online students. We're part of the online program here. We don't have that face-to-face component that you would otherwise get in a classroom environment. These learning activities, I mean, what we're really trying to aim to achieve by those is that you have an opportunity to spend some time with the material before you're being officially tested or assessed, if you want of a better term. So those activities, I want you to be free to explore the material, to spend time with it, and as Elizabeth said, you really have to spend time with the learning material and the activities before you jump onto the assessment, because it's like effectively going in to do your test and then coming back and doing the lessons later. It doesn't really make sense. So go through each of these sections. Now, the learning material in this subject actually directly correlates to the actual activity underneath. So if I want to do this particular activity here, all I will need to do is review the materials in this section above, and then I'll have all the information I need to complete that activity. We have already gone through these first 3 sections. In fact, the first video 2 weeks ago, we took you through section 1, which had about 10 questions, and we went through the last 2 sections last week. So today is just the finaliser for this particular subject. Yeah.
Sure.
And guys, I know some of the other subjects only have 3 assessments. This one has 5. You'll see as we go through it. If anything, these 5 are actually, probably slightly even easier than some of the other ones that have 2 or 3. So, and you'll see that as we progress. I think I'm just going to open up the very first assessment task. We just might read that out for students.
Sounds good.
And we shall go from there.
Let's do it. Okay.
Okay, so the very first assessment task here. As you can see, there are 2 questions. So all we are wanting you to do is to upload a response to these 2 questions. Couldn't be easier, couldn't be simpler. It's really just an extension of your lessons and your learning activities. These are the actual assessment things. So these are the things we absolutely need to see you absolutely able to demonstrate understanding and knowledge of. And so what I might do is I might just read through each of those 2 questions.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so question number 1 in this assessment task is list the main steps required to develop a recruitment, selection and or induction policy or procedure. So what are the main steps required to deliver a recruitment, selection and induction policy or procedure? Question 2, what are some points to consider when communicating changes to policies or procedures? So we've sort of touched on areas that surround and hover around these areas in your learning activities. We talked about areas in terms of what sort of things you might find in a policy, the procedure, what a policy or procedure actually is, what the objectives of those policies and procedures are. We've also talked about, in reference to point 2, we've talked about communication methods, we've talked about training methods, how you might, forums that you might use to communicate changes in policy and procedure, things like that. So we have started to touch on and dance around the sort of material that you'll want to sort of represent and engage in here, but really to answer this question, all you need to do is just pick up the actual pieces, copy those questions into a document, open up a brand new document like so, and then we just want to see your answer underneath. So should we talk about the first one, first question?
Let's go ahead and talk about that very first one. And I guess, Adam, as you've mentioned previously, we have done a lot of discussions around the importance of having policies or procedures, especially around the recruitment, selection and induction framework. So hopefully the whole concept of policy and procedure won't be alien to you. The question itself is really just asking you to list the main steps required to develop those types of policies or procedures. Now, it's not asking you to explain what those steps are, it is just asking you to list them. Now, I guess we can't probably go into too much detail because the resources really do give you a very good answer and will definitely assist you with answering this. I guess we could say that, you know, you are looking for about 7 different steps, but there are a series of steps, a series of progressive steps that you need to be able to take to be able to develop those policies and procedures. But the resource material will really assist you with this particular question.
So it's got here just the steps, no need to explain what each step is. So just, you know, we want to see just this broad understanding of that you, from scratch, what you might need to do, what you might need to consider, what are the things that you might have to achieve and do basically to create that policy and or procedure. And as mentioned, just this is a pretty straightforward question really. That's half of your first assessment done. So
It is,
yeah, nice and easy, guys.
Yep.
Use the materials. And how many steps? How many steps?
Look, there's 7 steps, Adam. So hopefully students will be able to identify and list those 7 particular steps in order.
Okay. So is there a particular content that you want the clients to be referring to when they list these 7?
Yeah, I mean it should probably. I would be looking at the steps involved in order, like it's just trying to not give it away, but obviously there are 7 systematic steps that you obviously follow when you are developing these types of policies or procedures. So I would be looking for those steps to be quite systematic and follow on from each other rather than just kind of just a 7 steps not in order, because obviously the 7 steps do highlight the process of development, so we really want you to be understanding and show your understanding of that process.
Okay, so they're really just 7 sort of generic broad sort of steps, really?
Yes.
Okay, but the guys will find that in the learning materials, okay?
Yes, well I believe so, yes.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll leave that to the guys to have a look into the learning materials to find the 7 steps of developing policy and procedure.
Definitely.
Let's have a look at the question 1B or question 2 of assessment 1. The question is, what are some of the points to consider when communicating changes to policy or procedure? So we talked a little bit about forums, we talked a little bit about, you know, methods of training and so forth last week. What we're really asking for you guys to come up with is just a list of some points, some things that you may want to consider when you're communicating these changes. So, anything you'd like to add to this one?
Yeah, and I think it's important that you, that when you are communicating changes to policies and procedures, you know that people are aware, they understand what's needed and what's required from them in the new policy. You know, they are able to know what the outcomes or what can happen if they don't abide by those policies. You know, you want to make sure that you're considering a lot of different options when you're communicating changes. And as we've talked a lot about with communication, people hear things differently, they see things differently, they accept things differently, they understand things differently. So, you know, these might be some things to take into consideration when you are communicating these changes to the policy and procedure.
That's a really good point that you raised there. Everybody sort of perceives things differently and everybody understands things differently. Actually, interestingly enough, I sit next to the quality team here in the office where I am based in Melbourne, and next to me is basically just a separate quality team. They send out a bulletin every so often with changes, and what they do is they actually highlight the changes. They highlight the people that are affected by those changes. So instead of having to read through the entire document, something that they've considered is, okay, we're about to send this document out that has all these changes on it. Okay, we're going to consider who it might, relate to and what those, who those particular people and departments are, so that when you do get that message, you can make that decision straight away, whether it's a relation to, direct relation to your working area or not. And what they also do is they actually summarise those changes in the body of the message. So if you need further information, then you can go in and actually get the actual, the hard facts or the details, as it were. So they give you an overview, and they let you know on the body of that email with the attachments of the changes, who's affected and who that email should directly relate to.
Okay, yeah, it's good.
So I think that's pretty. Yeah, I think that's a pretty clever sort of way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I guess you really want to consider everything that other people might consider, because when we're communicating things to people, we need to put ourselves into their sort of headspace. We need to consider things from their angle. So, maybe something that you might want to do is chat to the department heads and have a chat to them and say, look, these are the keys to the changes. How do you think that's going to affect your guys? What sort of considerations do you think, should I have to take into play here? And then you can kind of prepare yourself for rolling those changes out, so to speak.
Yep.
Now, there's some good stuff in the content on this as well, guys. They talk about, there's something in there talking about the 5 adjustment stages, is that right? It talks about a process that people go through when you're, becoming aware of any sort of adjustment or change. It's basically, the 5 phases of change, really, where, really the first phase is really just becoming aware of that change, and it goes all the way through to you're actively involved and participating in that change. So there's sort of 5 different stages there. Consider some of those things when you're communicating these policies as well, because what we're trying to effectively do is get people from point A to point B, and that transition is, those 5 phases are actually what people go through when they're getting from this point of not being aware of changes to now actually behaving in the way that these policy changes are trying to achieve. So look, go back and have a look at the learning materials for this one, I would suggest. But it's actually it's sort of pretty straightforward. These ones, there's sort of specific things that we're looking for there. Did you want to add anything more to this before we move on to the next assessment?
No, I think the guys should be good with these 2 first, that very first assessment. I think they're quite specific in what they need you to answer and respond with. So and hopefully you've had enough access to the learning materials and the learning activities to kind of be able to answer both of those areas. So I think they're pretty straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Otherwise, communicate directly with Alyssa and I, and we'll give you a helping hand through that stuff, no problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look at assessment task number 2. Now, I think this is basically just a couple of parts to this one. So what we're actually asking you to do is, the first part is, what are the main steps to ensuring compliance with legislation, policy, procedure, and or guidelines? So first, we want to know what the main steps are involved in ensuring that you are compliant with legislation.
Yep.
And the next part is detailed methods of providing access to training and other methods of support.
Yep.
So what we want to know is, we want you to detail, I guess, how the training's going to be put together and how you're going to support people through these changes, and so forth. And just a couple of methods organisations can use to source feedback. Kind of funny feeling, is that question one that's been used before in the learning activities?
Which one? I think the access to training and other methods of support we've definitely talked about previously.
Yeah.
And I think we have talked a little bit about making sure that, and how you make sure that your legislation, your policies, and your guidelines are compliant as well.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we've explored those ideas and those concepts in previous learning activities.
Definitely the last couple fall short, 100%.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
I mean, look, again, guys, I'm happy if you just pick up what's there, copy and paste, Control-C, open up a new document, and just give us each of those components.
Yep.
And a new document, there it is, 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
We can see exactly what your answers are for each. How many steps here would you like?
I think there's probably about 5 steps here I would be looking at, Adam, in terms of compliance and some of the steps that you need to take to be able to maintain that compliance. So obviously think about, it's obviously quite an important aspect of a policy or procedure to be compliant and to meet and match those guidelines. There are also a series of steps that you want to do to make sure that you are compliant with them. And I guess it's really all about, you know, your consultation, the accessibility of your your policies and procedures, the evaluation process, review process. You know, I don't want to go into too much detail, but, you know, it's just asking you to really tell me what those main steps are. So what do you do to make sure that your policies and procedures are compliant? Okay?
Yep. So those words that you mentioned before are really good for our students. Think evaluation.
Yeah.
Think, think in terms of instruction and training. Think in terms of accessibility to those documents. Think those words and explain. So we don't want full explanations, but we don't want just a list. So I've written here at least 5 things listed with sort of basic explanation, I guess. If what you've listed is self-explanatory, that's fine. If you write the word accessibility, you haven't written enough. So explain a little bit more what you mean by accessibility. But if you write whatever you write and if it makes sense just as a list, then that's fine. So really we're wanting at least sort of 5 broad sort of things that you might do to ensure that your policies, your procedures are compliant with with legislation, with the law out there. So
absolutely, definitely.
That's the first part. Second part, detailed methods of providing access to training and other methods of support. So,
and you started off before, Adam, by really, like you started off, it really is, and we've talked about this previously, what are some of the ways that organisations can actually provide training to their team members when it comes to things like, policy development or recruitment development, what opportunities are there to actually train? Like, how is that training information delivered? What options and what methods are there available? And again,
look, to be honest with you guys, like for me, these sorts of things are often, people sort of look past them in an organisation. They're often sort of just that, the boring stuff. Let's be honest with you, it's sort of the stuff that people look at and go, oh, okay, it's all the compliance stuff. It's stuff that just has to be ticked off to be achieved. It's not something that is of great interest to me. So, something that you might need to consider when you're detailing a method of, I guess, supporting and training your staff members up in these changes is how to make it dynamic, how to kind of engage people through this process, because otherwise it's pretty dry. So what can you do to funk it up? What can you do to really engage people? I know in our organisation here there's a lot of changes going on. They are talking about running workshops and doing things like that where they're getting people to be engaged that way with some of these changes to policy and procedure. And I think that's a really clever sort of method. What we want you to do is, okay, so workshops obviously is one of your methods that you can use. Just give me a bit more of an explanation on what you're referring to when you say workshops, or what sort of stuff might happen in a workshop. If you sort of explain it to me as if we don't know, that's perfect. That's the sort of thing that we're hoping to sort of see here. If you can come up with a creative answer, that's absolutely wonderful. Because that really, because that obviously shows an understanding. Now, I'm sorry, we've just got a student in the live feed who's having some audio problems. Let's see if we can just sort the student out. Do you mind before we continue? See how is everything else? Have you got sound on your computer at the moment? You're coming in through your computer. Can you just try and see if the sound comes through your computer in any other fashion? Just try and determine if it's your computer or if it's something to do with us. Because I can hear Alyssa perfectly. Sorry, I should probably actually write that because she can't hear.
Yeah. Look, I've just checked her audio as well, Adam. She seems to be on mic and speakers, so that seems to be fine.
We'll just spend 20 seconds trying to sort this out. If you're watching this on delay, just maybe skip through the next 20 seconds. Okay. Okay. Not sure. Not sure. Look, so we might have to. Sorry, again, I'm talking to a sheet. Just having audio problems. Okay, so let's continue on. I'll have that straightened out as soon as we finish. So let's continue. So yeah, what we really want you just to explain is just a system or a way that you can actually effectively communicate these changes and effectively assist people to, you know, in training. Some things we need to change, physically change the way that we actually do things, and some things are just different sort of changes of ideologies and methodology, you know, I guess sort of principles or the overarching policy. So not everything is easy to run as a training session, but that's what we want you to just think about, is ways that you can actually make it dynamic and inclusive for all people. Now have a look at, let's have a look at the last part of this one.
Yeah.
Which is really just methods an organisation can use to source feedback. So this, again, feedback we've talked about in plenty of other situations, plenty of other subjects. Actually, planning talks about it. We talk about feedback, different methods of feedback in project management or project planning. We then talk about it in, obviously, first subject planning, which is about your own self-development. So I think we're going to leave this one.
Yeah, we can't. I think if we hint to it, we're going to give too much away. So, but as you mentioned, Adam, yeah, we've definitely talked about this in other assessments and other units previously.
How many methods do you want here?
Oh, what do you think? I probably think people can get at least 4 out.
Okay, yeah. I think so. Yeah, so at least 4. Because that'll be a bit creative. So what we want to know is, how can the company, give me 4 ways the company can source feedback. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. So, and then that they could be sourcing feedback for anything. It doesn't really matter. So we just want to know 4 ways they can go about it. Let's move on to the next one. Let's have a look at assessment 3. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, definitely. See,
as you can see, guys, that's the first 2 assessments done. It's just a series of sort of review questions, more or less. It does warm you nicely into these ones. So yeah, let's progress. Sorry, Alyssa, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing. Just letting them know that, you know, obviously that's the first 2 assessments done. So, you know, obviously even though it seems like there are 5 assessments, which might be a significant number, they're actually not too bad, the assessments themselves. And they do really review, as we've already spoken about, the learning activity information that we've provided previously.
Okay, so now we're looking at which one? We're looking at assessment 3 now. So let's jump through this one.
Yep, definitely.
Wouldn't mind spending a little bit of time on the last one.
Sure. Yep.
So assessment 3, I actually really like this one. I know we sort of talked about it a little bit before. This one is the question, I'll just read it through. Assume you are responsible for forecasting recruitment requirements and filling any vacancies. Create a list of questions that you could consider that will help you identify person and position requirements.
Yes.
So, would you like to reword that question, or would you like me to?
Yeah. Look, I mean, you know, this is something that we did discuss recently, and I would be looking at, as the question mentions, just a list of creative questions that you can ask or you could consider that would help you to identify person and position descriptions. So think about yourself in the role, as it says, that you're responsible for forecasting recruitment requirements. Okay, so you're looking at future recruitment requirements in your organisation. What questions might you ask yourself or consider that will help you identify the type of person or the type of position you might need?
Yep. So imagine that you're basically writing up a brand new job description in the business. So it's your role to create this document, which is a description or a position description, position requirements. It's the job description for the role that you're looking to fill. So there's sort of 2 parts here, because you're having to do a bit of forecasting in the future. So there might be some questions that you create that are that sort of surround that sort of forecasting of future preparation component, but there are other components to it that relate to the actual job description and position requirements. So we want you to drum up a list of questions that you would ask yourself, or things that you would want to consider, is what the question actually states.
Yep.
When you're sort of developing that.
Yeah.
That'll help you identify person, position, and requirements. So
yeah.
So when you're developing that documentation, when you're putting together a job description, when you're trying to work out who's who and why and what are the sort of questions that you're going to ask yourself?
Yep.
Really, probably the only thing to mention here is how many questions are we looking for?
Maybe what do you think, about 10?
I would have thought at least 10, yeah.
Yep. And there are only questions here, so really at the end of the day, we just want you to come up with a list of questions.
Yep.
And that's all that the assessment does require from you. So I think if we look at about probably at least 10 questions, I think that hopefully will help you, cover all aspects of this particular question, or this particular assessment, actually.
So the guys may actually work them into sort of questions. So what, blah, 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 blah,
yeah.
Or how we, blah, 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 blah. But generally what is a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and we don't want, we don't want the old close-ended questions. We really do need you to be able to gain some feedback from the questions that you're asking, and hopefully the information from the question will need to be able to help you determine what you need. So, things like what, how, when, who, all of those types of things are a good starting point.
So you get the feeling, or get the vibe, for want of a better term, from what I've just written there on the screen. Sort of see, do you like that?
Yes, how will, Adam, yes.
Okay.
That's good.
So that just gets the guys into sort of frame set of a mindset or a frame of mind of where they need to be for that one.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with that. I'm happy to move on to the next one if you are.
I am very happy to move on to that next one too.
Okay, so let's look at assessment 4. We're actually going to get through this session pretty quickly today, it looks like, which is good. So let's have a look at assessment number 4. I shall read that out for you all. And okay, so assessment 4 include a brief proposal to recruit and ensure the document includes a request for approval to recruit and justification for the request. And then list the methods that you could use to source evidence and ensure the candidate is suitable. Okay, so let's reword this one a little bit differently, but let me just copy this out and we can talk about each a little bit.
Yes. So what essentially, I guess, what I guess we're looking for here is you need to obviously write a proposal about a recruitment position, a position that you are wanting to recruit for. Okay. So that would be the first step that I would look at. I would look at, kind of proposing to whoever it may be the reason, behind the recruitment process or the need for the recruitment process. I guess showing how it might benefit the organisation as well in that. So this is just about you kind of trying to write a proposal as to why you might need to recruit a specific person. Okay? It's proposal at the moment.
Okay, so am I on the wrong track there with that one, what do you think? So I've written here, the first part is write a proposal to your senior manager. I mean,
yep. Yeah. Yeah,
effectively,
definitely.
Yeah, so the proposal is, we need to recruit a new member of our team.
Yep.
So we want to sort of see you, we just want to see you actually writing that. What sort of things do you want to sort of see in there? I guess
I would
for
like
me,
yeah.
I just want to see like all of the components, like the actual role itself, who that person reports to, so sort of the general structure of that position, so to speak.
Yep.
Some of the general duties of that role, I really want a sort of an explanation of the, you know, of the position itself that you're actually proposing, because you're proposing, you're saying to somebody, well, the second part is the justification, but the first part is I guess, the facts. So we want to see all the facts there.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you all, so the question itself is really making sure that, you know, in the whole of your organisational structure that you have a framework and a process so that people don't just decide that they need somebody, that there has to be a reason, there has to go through a request process. You have to justify why you would need to recruit somebody. It's not something, I guess, that just can happen. There, you know, it's business. Business has objectives. Business has budgets, etc. So there is a real need to make sure that you can provide relevant information and evidence to support the recruitment process and the introduction of a new person.
Yep, absolutely. So that second part is, as well as telling us what the benefits of filling that role is, tell us what will happen if we don't.
Yep.
So, because that's actually quite a strong sort of kind of statement, I guess, if you sort of suggest, look, if we don't fill this role, this is the actual flow-on effect.
Yeah, that's exactly
and this
right.
is what we're, you know, talk about what the current landscape is right now. Talk about some of the changes that have happened in recent time, and say, look, this is where we're leading if we don't fill this role.
Yep.
So make your justification nice and strong. What I'd also like to see students do as well is make reference to the current business operations. So what's happening in the business, what's the strategic direction of the business. Part of your justification and part of getting support from senior management is going to be in reference to how well you actually link, you know, your position, your justifications to the actual overarching strategic direction and operational goal of the business. So I want you to put that in part of your justification. So talk about what the strategic direction of the business is and why this helps fit in with that.
Yep. Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely an important aspect of this.
So you can make that up. This can be sort of a creative exercise. You can. People are going to ask, well, what business are we talking about? That doesn't matter. So you can make that up. What we want to see is that you understand, or you have I guess you have the ability to sort of justify a need to bring people in and so forth. That's sort of the skill that we're trying to get you to engage in here. But I guess one of the most important ways to do that is to use the direction of the business as part of its own justification. So.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to this first part? This is sort of part one, I guess.
Yeah.
Because then the second part is this one here, number 2.
Which is list some methods you could use to source evidence to ensure the candidate is suitable. Yeah, so I guess this part is looking at the suitability of the candidate and telling us how or what information or what evidence you could get to make sure that the candidate that you have selected is suitable for your organisation and for the actual position itself. So there are obviously a number of different ways that you could show that a candidate, or you could find out if a candidate is suitable for a job role. I guess, things like previous experience or previous employment. If somebody's going for a job in a specific industry and they've got no experience relevant to that industry, I guess you would be looking at their resume or their experience as a piece of evidence to showcase that perhaps the candidate may not be suitable for that particular role.
Yep. There's not much we can really say in this. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Actually, this question probably would have been done better a little bit earlier on, but it's here. So let's just work with that. So guys, just give us a couple of lists. And with the previous one, I'm happy if you just list your answer here. But if the word or one or two words that you listed, if it doesn't make sense by itself, then add a little bit more to it. If the one word makes perfect sense by itself, then that's fine. So And yourself? Same?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. If it makes sense, just go with it.
No need to describe it if it makes sense, but if it doesn't make sense by itself, then add a few more words to it. Let's have a look at the very last, and that's it. That's 4 out of 5, 80% done. We've already done. We've talked about it in the last half an hour. So as you can see, you guys, once you start on the first one, you get a bit of a roll on without without long, you'll be onto the very last assessment, which is assessment number 5, which is the very last thing you need to do to complete this unit of competence, this subject, staff recruitment and induction.
Yes.
So let's open it up. Now I'm really excited about this one. This is a bit of fun, this one. So this gets you to practice a little bit about what you've been preaching for the entire subject and come up with a few suggestions, a few ideas, a few, you know, it sort of makes it a bit of a real sort of scenario, so to speak, but not too difficult. So what we're actually asking you to do is to write a detailed analysis, basically 1,000 words. It's nothing more than that, so nice and easy, of A and B childcare companies' recruitment and selection policy. There is an attachment which I'll open up for you. We'll go through that attachment with you now and we'll explain what you need to do. So this is just where you come when you're actually uploading your work. If you want to see the actual instructions, you'll need to click on the PDF file directly underneath it. You see where my mouse is pointed to now? Are you on my screen? You're looking at my screen?
Yes, we are looking at your screen.
It's a beautiful thing. I should have asked that 35 minutes ago, but that's okay. Risk mitigation. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to actually open up that PDF file. Let's have a read through it. So what you need to produce is a 1,000-word document for us on A and B Childcare's recruitment and selection policy, which you'll see is underneath this as we go. There's I guess a range of different things that we're looking for that we want to see you demonstrate an understanding of, which is things like, you know, the concept of outsourcing. We want to see things like diversity, equal opportunity, anti-discrimination principles, associated legislation, employee contracts. We want you to make some sort of reference to industrial relations, recruitment selection methods, so, you know, ways you go about that, including assessment centres, relevant legislation, anti-discrimination, we already talked about that, that's doubled up. Relevant terms and conditions of employment, things like that, understanding psychometric and skills testing programs, workplace relations. So there's, look, we've basically given every single possible category you could even conceive of. We just want to see that you've sort of covered the bases, if you like. You don't have to give us, you know, crazy in-depth discussions in terms of industrial relations and how they may impact on this particular policy. We just want to see there's some sort of reference, you know, to industrial relations. That's all we're sort of saying here. So to complete this question, in addition, suggestions for best practice methods in your analysis embodying the following. So communication skills to liaise across the organisation, ensure the policies are well supported. Leadership skills to engage others, ensure that processes are followed and supported. We'd like you to consider the following. Some of the above criteria is missing. So, okay, so let's go through the actual, what we actually want you to do is, yeah, well, let's take you through the actual example because this doesn't really make sense without doing so. So let's have a look, actually look at the example. So what you've got here is an example of a recruitment selection policy. We want you to read that. So have a look here. You've got an aim, a couple of points there. You've got the ways they identify their recruitment panel. Here's how they're actually advertising. So this is the policy, remember. This is okay. So methods for shortlisting candidates, the interview stage, so how they actually put together an interview panel and how the actual interviews go down. But this is the thing, there's things that are missing here, guys, and this is what we want you to do. We want you to do effectively an analysis of what's here. We want to see some suggestions on how we can actually ramp this up and get this a little bit better. We also talk about employment checks, so, you know, methods, I guess, for either notifying successful candidates or, you know, making that final decision and things like that. Induction. So we'll talk a little bit about induction there. So let's go back to the actual question at hand. So again, going from bottom up, it says that some of the above criteria is missing. So you'll see there that there's actually a couple of these things that aren't really referred to. Probably the best way to get started on this is actually have a look and sort of see what's covered and what's not covered. When you have a look and see what's covered, just say, is it covered well? Could it have been done better? If it could have been done better, then just give us an explanation. If it's not covered, if you can clearly see there's something in here that just hasn't been referred to, see if you can actually put it in somewhere for us. So what we want to know is where could you actually insert that, what would you say, and so forth. So what would you say So what would you say, because the guys need to demonstrate understanding of each of these areas.
Yep.
Alyssa, how would you think the best way to actually maybe format this is? Because that's probably going to be the tough thing for our guys, knowing how to put this together.
Sure.
What
Well,
would you?
I would be happy to see maybe maybe an overview of each of those topics there. So say, for example, in your analysis that you perhaps look at each one of those individual terms or each individual topics that are actually constructed right on front of you. And then I guess
Yep.
maybe just you could, for each of them, maybe point out, you know, where their strength is, perhaps where they might need to improve, and what suggestions you might make to be able to change. Or if you had the power to change that recruitment process, what would you include?
Okay, so like formatting the document, any particular suggestions, Alyssa?
In terms of
So for me, okay, so for me, I guess because students are going to want to know what the best way to actually put this together.
yes,
We're asking them to
I
do a
would
lot.
probably do, yeah, I'd probably do it topic based, I guess.
Okay, so you would actually copy each of these and then sort of provide an explanation of what,
Yep. Yeah.
I guess, improvements or, now when we say improvements, they can actually make reference to it. So if we're talking about employee contracts or the recruitment and selection methods, here's a tip. I know there's a little bit of something on that here, for example. So, you know, have a look. When you're talking about that particular subcategory, tell us that, okay, so yes, part of the analysis is actually letting us know that, yeah, they've actually taken care of that, or they could have done that a little bit better, or you might actually say that's actually done really well, and that's fine.
Yep.
So I think that's not a bad way. I think what you're saying then is using these core categories and then just making reference to your analysis. So what's working, what's not working, and things like that.
Yeah, obviously maybe just try to include some kind of introductory type of, you know, a couple of introductory sentences to start that overview, you know. But then maybe, yeah, just go into each one of those areas and just, yeah, just have a look at perhaps what they do well, perhaps what they don't do well, and then just any concepts or anything that you might suggest, like especially if it's legislatively required and things like that, just identifying that, you know, this should go in or reference should be made to this particular piece of legislation to enjoy compliance, you know. I'm just having a look at
Yeah. Okay, now the other thing is, guys, some really helpful stuff for you that we've included here. If you scroll down to the very, very, very bottom, you'll see that we've got some supporting resources. So we talk a little bit about critical and analytical writing, and actually there's a really cool website here that just gives you some tips on how to sort of do critical analysis, how to look at it, how to actually break it apart, how to form sentences. So for those that really want to get into developing their sort of critical and analytical skills or their skills in writing, really cool website this one, so we strongly suggest to have a look at that. Workplace info, news info for Australian HR professionals, and so the last couple of websites here are just helpful websites and resources in reference to, I guess, general human resources, the Australian Human Resource Institute. So if you're looking up things like recruitment and selection, let's click on a couple of things, shall we? But nevertheless, important resources that'll assist you. So a little bit about various different sort of things, you know, how to go about doing it. If you do some research, if you have a look and see what, you know, what's sort of suggested here and what things to include, what things not to include, this is a good resource for those that, you know, effectively if you're running your own business, this will sort of help you to put all the things together. If you're running a small business, you may not have a whole human resource department because there may only be a couple of you. These give you sort of I guess the frameworks to work around and work with. So when you're doing your critical analysis and when you're analysing the actual example that we've given you, now bear in mind the example we've given you is nice and simple, it's not overly complex. We want you to come up with some other ideas. We want you to take it a bit further, but also let us know where it's working. So let us know what you think makes sense about it. Let us know, as long as you cover, as Alyssa mentioned, just cover each of these areas. That might be one of the ways you format up your work. But so have a look. But yeah, as long as those areas are covered, check out that first link which talks about how to write in that style, and that'll also give you some ideas on how to put it together as well.
Now, with just as an offset, with the bit about
Yeah.
suggestions for best practice.
Yes.
So down the bottom there where we've got suggestions, please, in addition, please include suggestions for best practice methods in your analysis for embodying the following skills. So communication skills and leadership skills. Where would you like to see, where do you think the best place for those would be?
Look, you can just add it at the end. I mean, to be honest with you, look, these things are effectively covered well in some of the learning activities. So I'm not looking for an incredibly long, large, expanded version. Just refer to each of those. So maybe right at the end, put a section on best practice.
Yep.
Talk about, talk about maybe just one or a couple of sentences on, communication.
Yep.
Which we've already done. We've talked about. You've done some of the other assessments. And leadership skills. So what we talk about when we use the word leadership, again, we're talking about ways to engage and motivate other people to effectively mobilize energy out of others. So what we want to know is, so okay, communicate. So how are you going to communicate and how are you going to engage those people? So maybe what are some of the training methods, or we started talking a little bit about workshops or finding ways to make things as engaging as possible. That's what we want to see. Just give us a couple sentences at the end on communication and engagement. Communication and leadership, and I'm happy.
Cool.
Should I have done a quick version of putting this together?
No, I think it's quite straightforward. I mean, I think if everybody's kind of obviously listening now and seeing previous ways in which, we kind of structure those assessments. I think hopefully make it easy for yourself. Just make sure you obviously a couple of sentences to introduce it, and then you cover all aspects that the actual assessment tasks need you to cover, and you address all of the requirements that we've discussed, followed by those best practice methods for that communication and leadership skills.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the other way to cut this up, the other way that students might want to do this is they might actually want to take the document itself and actually refer underneath each of the subsections of the document, do their analysis of each of those sub-areas, whilst making sure that they're ticking off each of these things in the process. If they want to do that, that's certainly fine method of going about it, so that's cool.
Yep.
If we don't have any questions, I think that actually wraps up the session today for the assessments in this unit.
Yeah, and it's not too bad. Like, there are 5 assessment tasks. This is probably the biggest of the assessment tasks, but, one of the most important ones, just to show that, you've kind of understood the requirements, of having, and the importance of having that framework in place, and, identifying a policy and procedure, looking at it, and really being able to determine whether or not it meets the standard and the requirements, it's best practice, and all those types of things. So, this is going to be a great exercise and activity for you guys, just to kind of really be able to apply all of that knowledge.
Perfect. I'm sure the guys will be okay with this. We've tried to sort of make it a little bit contextualised for our cohort with this one. So it's been designed with you guys in mind. So you guys should be more than okay with that. Let us know how you go, and we're really keen to see some of your submissions.
Lovely.
I think that's it. Thanks for your attendance, everybody.
Not too bad.
Thanks very kindly to you.
Yeah. All right.